All right, y'all. Welcome back to another edition of Collector's Market Watch, where we talk about all things Lorcana from a collector's perspective. That means enchanteds, sealed product, and promo cards. And y'all, we've arrived. We're into the unknown, no pun intended. We are going past World Championships through Season 1 into Season 2. We're almost in this somewhat bridge period, I would call it, and the market is certainly reflecting that. It's very wide, very unknown. We're going to unpack that and some other things as well in today's episode. But y'all, before we get started, it would mean a lot to me if you would consider scrolling down and hitting that subscribe button. We do Market Watch content on the channel every Tuesday, and we do pack opening content on the channel every Sunday and every Thursday. Also, make sure to go join the Discord. Link is down in the description for that as well. And with all that out of the way, let's hop in to today's episode. And we are actually going to start in the Discord for today's episode. And that doesn't sound crazy because typically we have been, starting the Discord, calling out our collector spotlight, picks that y'all have been posting in the weekly polls channel, etc. Wasn't going to do it this week, but at the 11th hour, someone posted a pick that I have to shout out and give a huge congratulations to. The Randalorian, shout out you, my guy, for pulling your first ever enchanted rare in the hobby. Super happy for you. I know that for myself, I know exactly what pack I opened, where I was standing, the moment where I pulled my first enchanted. And for all of us who are in this hobby, I do feel like a lot of us come from other TCGs or other areas where we collect things that feed our nostalgia, make us just feel that sense of positivity, and it's a lot of times why we do it, right? And that it's just such a cool moment and such a cool feeling for you to be able to do this. And just wanted to, before we got started into the market, just take a moment, give you a huge shout out, man. Congratulations to you. Awesome moment. Way to get your collection journey started with an absolutely beautiful Mushu pull. And now that we have given you that shout out, let's get into the actual market, and we are going to start within eBay, where we typically end the content, but we are going to start in here for today's session and probably hop back in here at the end of the session. It's interesting. Last week, kind of overlapping when we posted the content about the whole new world, from World Championships and what it might sell for, etc., kind of overlapping at the same time. One actually sold on Whatnot, infamously now for $11,000, as we've all seen. So it's been about a week since that's happened, but I did get asked to do a once-over on my thoughts of just the card in the market relative to, was it a good price? How will it look going forward? Things like that. I also got asked to talk about the one-of-one Mickey as well. And, honestly, for that, my only thoughts, my only shout outs on that, I would say would just be that, it sounds to me like, from what I'm hearing, DKP isn't going to sell it. I did hear, I think someone posted in my comments that it was sold, and I was like, oh my gosh, really? How did you know that? How much, right? And I haven't heard anything. If y'all know anything about that, leave me a comment down in the comment section. But from the research I've done, kind of reading things, watching things, it sounds like he's going to hold on to it. And he is the market for that, right? And so until something triggers in his brain that makes him think otherwise of getting rid of it, there is no market for that card. However, as always, things are always fluid in any hobby. So even at time of me recording this, that thing could be out there right now being sold. So let me know in the comment section, y'all, if you've heard anything about that. But for now, we'll probably table that and just talk about the whole new world promo. And first and foremost, we see one, selling here for $30,000 US. Interestingly enough, this price, and regardless of who the seller is, don't know who it is, it doesn't matter in this sense. I actually think this is a very fair price, at least a fair starting price, a fair starting ask, which is pretty interesting when you think about a card of this magnitude that is so scarce, so sparse. There aren't that many of them out there, and the biggest reason why I say that is because I do believe, relative to the other massive chase cards that are out there that have sold and we have data tracked on them, I think this is pretty fair. So let's start grabbing the data points that we can. Of course, as there are so few that are sold and the market is so small for these cards, you're only going to get so many data points to pull on, right? So let's first talk about the $11,000 that sold on Whatnot, right? That, in my opinion, relative to when we talk about other cards, like for instance here, when we talk about, say, like the Golden Mickey, the 1 of 500 serialized, for those of you who I'm sure, at this point you know this, but as we kind of drill into the card here and we see here, this one is technically number 126 out of 500. We see here this was sold recently, like a few months ago on Golden for about a little over $15,000, almost $16,000. Again, just looking at it from a commodities perspective, and when we talk about the idea that there's 500 of this Golden Mickey taking the top 8 and the DLCs, etc., that sold for $16,000, and then we also look from the perspective of going back to a whole new world, which we know every single competitor who competed in the World Championship received this card. That means there's 28 of those cards. I also believe that if you win a set amount of these matches within the World Championships, you get rewarded with another card that could bring you up to about 33 cards. We did talk about this on the last episode of Market Watch. However, I'm not 100% sure how many of these actually are out there in the wild, but there is a very good chance that when we look at this actual Whole New World card, that there's probably like 10% or less of this card out there relative to the Golden Mickey that has been selling. Now, granted, markets go up and down, right? Like just because something sells for $15,000 at one point doesn't mean it can't sell for 10 the next, and then 30, and then up and down and up and down, and that's what makes a market, right? Peaks, valleys, etc., right? However, I do think that just relative to when we talk about how there are 500 of those Mickeys, or soon to be 500 of those Mickeys, out there in circulation relative to the 33 that we know about with the Whole New World, honestly, it really does make sense that this card should be going for more than $15,000. So honestly, like my only take on it is I think someone got a great deal at $11,000. Huge congratulations to you. I have no idea. I don't even want to begin to speculate how the market is going to pan out for this card going forward, but I do think that you're going to see the price pop a little bit more. I would be absolutely baffled if this card goes for single digits unless something really, really shocking happened with the hobby, to be honest with you. I know that there's a lot of talk right now about like there's not enough DLCs in North America, and there's just, there's a lot of headwinds for the hobby and stuff like that right now, but I'm kind of in the same boat as the other creators who've spoken on this in the past, where it's like, yeah, it'll be fine. It's so easy to think about things so grand and so macro that are these moments in time, but in reality, y'all, like we're 2 to 3 years into a hobby that we hope to have it be here for decades in time, right? Like you talk about Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh that have been around for decades. Like we're in season 2, right? Well, we're bridging into season 2 right now. There's going to be plenty of time for them to get this right, and the demand is there. And again, they have that unfair advantage that other TCGs don't, that they will be able to pull on, which there is that nostalgia growing up. Every single one of us growing up followed these characters, loved these characters, and they're going to be able to pull on that thread. Anyway, I don't see this card going into the single digits, but what I will say is you might continue to see more sales go for the low teens, like 13, 15, whatever. And even that would surprise me as well. Again, I really do see this card starting to trickle up. The only thing is that we're only going to get so many sales on it in the first however many months, even years, right? Because there's only so many floating around in circulation to create that market, right? But overall, I would say whoever got that $11,000 deal, big ups to you. Congratulations. And with that, I also want to start going into some of the retail cards within the space and start talking about how the market is starting to shift from a meta perspective, collecting perspective, etc. I want to start out with Diablo Devoted Herald, obviously, as we kind of start to look into the data here, look into the analytics here. We see that current market price going for about $110 right now. Obviously, as we all know, like high point being like, the mid, like high to like, like mid to high 200s, like I think it says 257 right here. High sales price. Obviously, that would have been at time of the FOMO. But y'all, I remember this card even at the dip right here, like 150, 140, like even getting into a 3-month perspective here. You see it chilling in the mid 100s. Like it really held its water there for a very, very long time. But now going into this 1 month here and starting to go like lowest verified listing, I mean, we are officially underneath the $100 mark. Lowest verified coming in at 95 for the card. I mean, we are under $100 for this card. And this is very much, it's really a testament and a classic case of when we think about like not buying into the FOMO and doing all that you can to be able to hold off of it. We've talked about it with like when we talk about like the Tamatoa, et cetera, right? Like I realize right now the Tamatoa is still going to be embodied and incorporated into the rotation format that is coming. So it's going to continue to hold its weight as it's prevalent in the meta. But when we think about such a foundational card like Diablo Devoted Herald that for the longest time seemed like such a card that we were talking about like things like power creep and how are they going to stop this? And obviously back, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, how could you ever think that like, oh, well, don't worry, rotation, they'll do some sort of rotation type situation, which it's definitely possible that we could have thought that, right? I mean, because other TCGs absolutely do that, very prevalent TCGs. But then you also have TCGs like Yu-Gi-Oh! That from a gameplay perspective have been very successful for a very long time. And they have gone the power creep route, and they will go along the route of the ban list. I understand we have a couple of cards that are banned right now, but I really do think that Lorcana is hoping that the rotation situation is going to help, completely eradicate the idea of power creep. But y'all, when we talk about Diablo Devoted Herald, which quite frankly is one of the ultimate, enchanteds that you can pull from any set, or at least it was for the last, however many months, looking and comparing and contrasting it against, I believe at time of this recording, the 10th highest enchanted rare in the current set of Reign of Jafar, looking at Diablo Devoted Herald, as we've seen, looking at average retail price, like about 110, going down, looking at Desperate Plan here, look, average retail price coming in 107, very similar to Diablo, and once again, looking at the lowest verifieds, coming in like 93, 94. I mean, you basically have a one-for-one compare and contrast, and at the same time, like, these two cards, you would never associate these two cards with each other. And even if you wanted to go and take it even to a further extent, which I don't know that I want to do because I don't think the parallels are quite there, looking at it, like, don't even take Diablo. Take the one card that's more expensive than Diablo and Ursula's Return. Take Ariel. Ariel, I think, is going for like 115, like right now, lowest verified. And it's like, that's got the Disney Princess thread that you can pull on it. And it is played in some steel decks. Not quite as prevalent as like an Emerald Diablo. But at the same time, y'all, I mean, you have such a fall from grace from a price perspective with Diablo, and you have Desperate Plan, which, from a collector's perspective, let's just be honest, like, that is an overlooked card from a collector's perspective. Now, let me reel it back in for a second and first and foremost say that any single card that is an alternate art, difficult to pull, chase type of card, I will never overlook. So I'm not overlooking Desperate Plan in that context. However, like, if you pull Desperate Plan, from a collector, like, you're gonna say, what are you gonna say to yourself? You're gonna say, oh, I wish it was Into the Unknown. I wish it was Rapunzel. I wish it was Stitch. Like, you're gonna have some cards on that short list that are a little bit higher up the list with Desperate Plan. Yet here Desperate Plan sits as a very mid enchanted in Reign of Jafar, which right now that set's still retailing for over $100. But honestly, y'all, from a retail perspective, Reign of Jafar, I mean, right now, that box is a good buy. I mean, if you bought Reign of Jafar for $100 right now and you pulled Desperate Plan, you pulled your money back. That's like like I said, that's like the 10th biggest card and the 10th highest, price card in the set, which means that like almost 2/3 of the cards, you're going to pull your money back. And there are other cards on the rise as well. And we're going to talk about those in a little bit here as well, on this episode. But very interesting when we see that perspective of looking and comparing and contrasting such a foundational card in the current, and I would say historical presence of Lorcana versus, just a very mid enchanted from the most recent set of Reign of Jafar. And going in and looking at Reign of Jafar a little bit closer and seeing what we have from a price perspective. And I do like to do this week by week because things do change frequently with this set. I mean, honestly, y'all, we have cards like It Means No Worries that's up there. I mean, looking at market price going upwards of $140. And don't get me wrong, this card has nice tack. But at the same time, like, this is a 9-cost uninkable brick. You know what I mean? Like, this is like, look, again, you don't have to be like a crazy good game player to understand that, like, this card is not without its weaknesses. And this card is sitting here way higher than Diablo right now. And that's because the market is starting to price in the idea that very soon here, aside from Infinity format and aside from, I believe if I'm understanding correctly, one of the 3 DLCs where Infinity will kind of have a little bit higher prevalence, like, Diablo is just a card that, from a game player's perspective, isn't going to get you in DKP's chair. So, like, when you think about that, it's like, you are going to lose what is currently, in the current state of the hobby, the vast majority of the pool of hobby enthusiasts, which are the game players, which is always a good thing. It's a healthy thing for any hobby. That's fantastic. But again, we're starting to see that contrast with cards that have just been floating above it all, like Diablo, where now I would say from a collector's perspective, it might actually be a pretty good time to pick up that card right now, because at least you are getting it at a drastic discount to what you have gotten it before. We also see that with other cards that are very much on the come up as well. And I'm talking about cards like Bambi here that even like at average market price right now, $90 for this card. However, I want to dig a little bit more into this card and talk about this card because even in a market and in a hobby where honestly, like most hobbies, when a new set comes out, and we have talked about this ad nauseum on the channel before, especially on our Tuesday Market Watch episodes that we do here every Tuesday, like this episode, it is very, very consistent and well known at this point, especially with the Lorcana hobby. We'll stay in that lane, that when a new set comes out, what's the first thing you do? You don't buy the pre-sales. You don't do that. People are trying to kind of grab you for more, for more than what the actual set's going to retail for, MSRP for, etc. Don't do that, right? Next thing that's going to happen, the enchanteds are going to be overinflated, and there's going to be that FOMO where it's like, okay, well, now those cards are available. Now those cards are here for you. Like, let's grab them. Man, is this, like, this card, it's the hot new thing. You want to grab this card. They'll dip. And that's, and even Reign of Jafar is not, like, immune to that or, like, impervious of that as well. Stitch, Rapunzel, even Into the Unknown, which, has been bouncing around a little bit more. Like, all of those cards, Lady, like another very meta-prevalent card, all dipping in price. However, when we look at Bambi, looking at average retail price of Bambi coming in at 90, that doesn't necessarily tell the whole story when we look at Bambi, because we see the 3-month here, we obviously see this dip, like, this natural dip that we have right here that honestly pretty much every enchanted does with every new set, unless it's like the most played card ever. And even those cards like a Tamatoa, they will see their very short, like, gradual dripping off of the clip. But then we see this little bounce here in price, and it looks like it is gaining traction and gaining momentum. And we even go down, starting to look at average retail prices, looking at lowest verified listings here. We're coming in at 99 and then 100. I mean, basically, we have arrived in the triple digits for Bambi. It will not at all surprise me that, 1 week from today, when we are doing the next episode of Market Watch together, we now have 11 cards in Reign of Jafar that are going for triple digits. And honestly, I haven't really super scrutinized the other cards that are very much creeping up in price with Reign of Jafar as well. It is very possible that 2/3 of the enchanteds in Reign of Jafar, if you yank them out of a box, you are pulling your money back. That is wild value. We haven't seen value like that since Into the Inklands, and honestly, like, I have said for the longest time from a collector's perspective, like, that is where the true value is, and I will continue to say that until it changes. I mean, because it's the truth. You think about a first chapter booster box, which even though it is dipping down right now, we still have a very improper and unhealthy balance where quite literally any card in that set besides Elsa, you are not pulling your money back. You're not even close. Now, Elsa's going to double your money, but at the same time, like, that's like, what are the odds of that, right? It's just not really that great. We can kind of have rough napkin math, but it's just not really that great, right? So, like, that is probably a box that you want to keep, sealed if you truly are someone who's trying to get, the absolute most out of your value. However, that doesn't mean that the market is wrong, right? The one thing that we always say is the market is always right. Like, the market will decide what the true value of the card is, and that will be a combination of the game players and the collectors coming together as a joined community and saying, that's what the card is worth. So you never question it, but you have to make your decisions based off of it. When I see this Bambi, the two things that come to my mind, first and foremost, is, okay, this card is on the rise, and as I read the tack of this card, it says, when you play this character, gain 1 lore, and then also, when an opponent plays a character, return this character to your hand. Once again, you don't have to be like a crazy game theorist and game player to understand that there's loop potential there, right? Now, again, that's going to be for someone else who's much smarter than me in the deck building and game playing, side of things to be able to go and create that tack. But at the same time, sure, I can see it. Like, I could see why it might be, usable, low cost, uninkable, not ideal, but it's low cost, right? This ain't a 9 brick, it's a 3. So it's possible that in Amethyst decks going forward, in a season and in a rotation that we have no idea about, because we don't know the cards for Fabled yet, like the season hasn't really gotten kick-started yet, yeah, maybe people are buying this card up. Maybe people see value in a very wide, very flat meta, right? And so, to me, that's the big theory that I'm running with Reign of Jafar, and why so many of these enchanteds are overblown and overpriced. It's, yeah, a lot of them have decent tack, and it very well might be that, like, that's the meta, that's the strong Ink Duo combo to have, but we just don't know right now. We have no idea what Fable is going to bring, so we need to have a better understanding of that, and that's why we're sort of living in this bridge period right now. So, right now, I'll be monitoring Bambi. This will certainly be this card, and honestly, anything else in Reign of Jafar. As a collector, I'm trying to turn a head towards. Like, obviously, like, look, like, if you guys watch my other content, you know that, like, I'm buying Enchanteds, from Rain of Jafar. My wife's buying me Enchanteds from Rain of Jafar because obviously, like, there's that aspect of it as well. Look, I'm speaking right now from a margin perspective and a maximizing your value perspective. But when you have folks like me who are trying to get content out of it, like, obviously there's other things going on, right? But anyway, if you are someone who wants to be able to get that card to, like, really get that peak part of your collection rounded out, whether that's Into the Unknown, whether that's Tamatoa from Arcasia, like, whatever, right? Go for it. Like, if it's going to truly make you happy and you have the ability to do it, go do it, right? We're just giving you ways to be able to try and cut through the market a little bit and win from a value perspective. And so if that's who you are listening to this right now, Bambi is something that we'll monitor, but certainly not something that I'd be grabbing right now as I'm seeing it bounce in price. And certainly be something that could be valuable in the meta going forward. So very interesting there. The Rain of Jafar Enchanteds continue to impress. Set is crazy. Very impressive on that side of things. Last card I do want to call out is Anna Braving the Storm. This is a Disney promo signature card that you do get from the Disney parks. This is the third iteration. I mean, technically, I think there might be one in Japan, China. I forget if it has the signature on it or not, now the more I think about it. But anyway, in North America, you have the Mickey, and then you have the Elsa, and now you have the Anna. Looking at the data for Anna, retail price right now coming in the mid-90s, but once again, that's not the whole story. Only 2 listings on this right now, and this 120 is a very recent listing, which is the only reason that I want to talk about this right now. If you do look at this card on secondary markets and try to find some sort of value for this card. And before I call that out, let's also call out that, look, when we look at more data here, we do see that we do have a current sale for the 120 mark. So the market has now been set at that 120 mark. And to be fair, like, I guess, hey, shout out Kaj Collects. I mean, hey, shout out you, my man. Because, I mean, like, coming in at that number, like, that is more than fair to think that you could get that value for that card. But looking at secondary markets, y'all, this is a very, very liquid card. But it's a very difficult card to find value for right now. Going through, looking on eBay and stuff like that, everything I'm seeing is either overpriced or you can buy, like, play sets of it for, like, $400, which is, like, that's fine, I guess. Like, that's fair that you get, relative to the market that we're seeing right now. That's fair value. But at the same time, like, as a collector, do I really want to buy a play set of it when I only want 1, maybe 2? Like a binder copy and a graded, slab copy or something like that. Like, even if I wanted to, I got to go sell 2. That's more emotion for me that I, as a collector, like, I don't really want to do. But that's kind of my only option right now relative to the Elsa, which you would think is, like, the bigger banger of a card, right? That card is all over the place, and you can find that card for, like, mid to high double, like $60 to $80, something like that. Very, very findable in both North American and European markets right now. Look, I'm not even going to begin to speculate why this is. If someone knows, once again in the comments, let me know. That helps me learn. Like, I would be fascinated to know by this, because what I'm not understanding is why the much more obvious, character that, is the one that is much more sought after, the same character that the Spirit of Winter first chapter is, like, just ridiculously stratospheric in price, and why the Into the Unknown that has that same character on there, which probably should not be the price that it is ballooned in price also, and both have sustained, with Rain of Jafar, a little bit shorter timeline, but with first chapter, that Elsa Spirit of Winter has absolutely outpaced the market considerably from a retail perspective, right? So now you bring that same thread to these promo cards, and it's Anna that's doing it. Now, obviously, I could think to myself, like, well, they printed more of Elsa because they figured they'd want to have more of them in the parks. There weren't as many Annas. Like, that could very well be. I don't know. But what I will say about a card like this is one of those awesome, awesome stories that, like, years from now, however long from now, we're going to say to ourselves, why is this card so expensive? And you're going to be able to tell that great story. If you're somebody who owns this card, you're going to be able to say, yeah, well, it's a weird one, right? You got it at the Disney parks. There weren't that many of them. They didn't print that many of the Anna. If that's actually what's going on, I actually really have no idea. But a super interesting story. But I absolutely think that it's it's fair market value where it's at right now, just because that's what we're seeing the market say that it is. And also what I will call out too is, if you are someone who has this card, you certainly have the ability to go in and be able to maximize on that value, because they're just not out there right now. So it's definitely a seller's market for the card right now. Super interesting, but that's going to wrap it up for the TCG player side of things. Do want to pop into eBay Player quickly before we get out of here and just call out a couple of things in that more grail side of things. First call out I want to make when we talk about cards and listings that have gone sold. We do see that we have a couple of invited to the balls here. Obviously, selling for $17.50 didn't actually sell for that. It was bid or best, best offer. But at the same time, I'm seeing invited to the ball, and these other cards kind of in this we'll call it $1,000 to $3,000 range, really continuing to hold weight regardless of what the hobby is doing around it. And I would just also call out and scroll. I'm just going to go right immediately here to it, where we see both, a couple of D23 promos here. We see the Cruella, and we also see the Captain Hook here, where, honestly, for the longest time, I have seen these cards stay between that $1,000 to $2,000 range for these two cards. You do typically see also the Robin Hood in there as well. You do typically see the Stitch Rockstar and the Maleficent Monsters Dragon go for a little bit more. I definitely think that's just, it's just the preference of the audience, preference of the market. Typically you see those go for more like $2,000, $3,000. And then of course the Elsa Snow Queen, once again, stratospheric, going for, anywhere from, I guess, it really does vary, like mid-5s to mid-7s in price there. But over the course of what has been a very interesting, and I guess the best adjective would be like a very rocky market that we've seen here for the past however many months, since like kind of the no announcement of more events, and maybe some folks flooding away from the game, trying other things, coming back in, market popping again, like through the ups, through the downs. It just goes to show that cards like this, that were the first of their kind, that were something that is like truly what started it all, regardless of the health of a TCG, cards like that will always stay prevalent. I mean, there's like Harry Potter was a TCG for a while, and there's still boxes out there sealed that are going for a ton of money, and like that's not a thing anymore, right? But it doesn't matter, because the market and the fan base and the nostalgia is still there, and people are okay with it. They're like, I still want it. I still want to feel something with that IP, right? With that hobby, or with those characters. I want to feel something, attach it to, say, a card or a collectible or a TCG or what have you. Awesome to see that these cards are continuing to hold their weight in the market. Beautiful thing. But overall, I think we have a wonderful, wonderful season ahead. Great things ahead for the hobby. Super excited to bring you all the coverage around that. But y'all, that's going to do it, and that's going to wrap it up for this week's edition of Collectors Market Watch. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, and also go join the Discord. Link is down in the description for that. And until next time, we'll see you all on the other side. Peace out.